Well, haven't reviewed a Star Wars movie since The Force Awakens. Yeah, might as well talk about the new one no one wants to talk about. Well, it's finally here. The Star Wars movie everybody has been dreading. Solo, a Star Wars story. A movie plagued with production problems, let alone the fact that no one wanted this movie to be made. Everybody was against this movie, and there is no point in doing this movie. But here it is, here we go. And you know what, going in this movie, I am a huge Han Solo fan. I mean, how could you not be? He's probably my favorite Star Wars character. I love him, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to see this movie. I didn't want to see another actor try to play Han. You can't have Han Solo without Harrison Ford. I didn't want to see an unnecessary backstory, like revealing his origin. I expect this movie to be completely just like by the numbers, Han Solo origin story, just going through every plot points of his origin to get to where he is at the beginning of A New Hope. I expected all of that. And you know what? Coming out of this movie, was it the complete disaster that I was expecting it to be? No. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised to say, I enjoyed this movie. It's not great by any means, and is really nothing special, but it's a solid, entertaining movie. It definitely has problems, and I have issues with it. But you know what? It could have been worse. But the thing is, it's Star Wars. It could have been better. It could have been something special. It felt really weird to go into a Star Wars movie, not expecting much, and then come out and being yeah, it's nothing special. And that's what this movie is. It's a strange day when a new Star Wars movie is coming up, and, I'm not hyped for it. The days leading up to this movie, or even the day of, it felt so weird to be oh yeah, there's a new Star Wars movie tonight. And it just felt so, disappointing to feel that way. But either way, though, for this video, I'm just going to combine it all and do, my spoiler-free, initial review for it, and then I'm going to go into a spoiler section, because I don't know if there's enough material for me to really do a whole another video on. Plus, with this weekend being Memorial Day weekend and stuff, I'm going to be pretty busy and won't really have time to get a spoiler-filled video out till later, so I'm just kind of combine it and start out with my spoiler-free opinion on the movie, then I'll move into spoilers later on. So, spoiler-free opinion. What works about this movie is the cast, surprisingly. Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo was my biggest concern going into this movie, mostly because, he never sold me in the trailers. All the footage I saw of him, he just seemed off. Everything else seemed alright. Donald Glover looked really good as Lando, and, everything else seemed pretty good, but he was the one thing that just seemed, completely off. And I'm surprised to say he's actually pretty good. I actually really liked him as the character. He really got the mannerisms down of Han Solo, and just, the way he acted and everything. He got the essence of Han Solo right, which I was really happy for. I was really happy that he did that, because if he didn't work, this whole movie would have just been screwed. Also, I would have really felt bad for the actor, because Alden Ehrenreich is actually a pretty good actor, and if he totally sucked in this role, his career he would never live that down, for the rest of his career. So I'm glad he pulled through. I was always surprised in the opening scene in this movie, the first time you see him, you kind of see him kind of in silhouette, very dimly lit, and he has the height and everything of Han Solo, and he has the walk too. He has the same kind of walk as Harrison Ford. And that opening bit, I was oh, okay, let's see how this goes. And the one issue I have with him, though, that I still kind of annoyed me throughout the movie is just his voice. His voice just doesn't, I feel like a Han Solo voice. It doesn't have that kind of gruffness to it. And I know it's just younger Han Solo and stuff like that. But even then, it just doesn't feel like the voice that would progress into Harrison Ford's voice. It's if I had the look and build and everything of Han Solo and the mannerisms and everything, but I still had this voice, you'd be no, that doesn't sound right. Other people in the cast, of course, include Donald Glover as Lando, who was great. He was awesome, but not enough Lando. Lando really wasn't in the movie a whole lot. And that's kind of a bummer, but Donald Glover just, he perfectly captured the essence of Billy Dee Williams. And it was awesome. And I was just really happy to see more of the Lando character, since the new trilogy seems to not want to have him in it at all for some reason. So I was glad. That's the one, positive thing I was going into this movie with. Was okay, we don't need to see this movie, but at least we're going to get more Lando, because the sequel trilogy refuses to give us that. But you know what? More Lando is never a bad thing, and he was awesome. But the character that stole the show was probably Chewbacca. Chewbacca was great. He was funny. He had some really good moments. And his interaction with Han was really good. Like, their chemistry together was great, and that was like the core of the movie, and it worked really well. So I liked them a lot. The other cast is really good. Like Woody Harrelson, is really good. Not really stand out. Like he was fine, but he was still good. Paul Bettany as the villain was, I guess, fine. The fact that he's only in 2 scenes in the movie, though, really, like, it's like, I don't know, his role is kind of, typical kind of like gangster villain, which I kind of applaud them for making the villain just like this typical gangster human character, and not some sort of like big, crazy, like alien creature, making it a little bit scaled back. That's what I kind of like about this movie, is that it's very kind of like scaled back, and there's like no real like Jedi or like mystical presence in the film. It's just kind of like a heist movie, or like kind of about these characters like doing a job. Like there's a train heist scene in this movie basically, and that was a sequence I actually really enjoyed. It's like the equivalent of an old school cowboy train robbery, and just put in the Star Wars universe. And I like that sequence a lot. There are some good sequences in the movie. That I really like the middle half of the film, because like my major issues with this movie is that the first half is just so rushed. It's just moving from set piece to set piece, to where it's kind of exhausting, and I'm just kind of like, can we just stop for a second and just like develop some characters, please? Like you kind of get introduced to Woody Harrelson and his crew, and then Han wins them over, and immediately the next scene they're on a mission, and you're like, okay, there we go, sure, you know what I mean? And also those characters, the people on his crew, are so underdeveloped, and just like there's just kind of there, like they're so underdeveloped. And there's really nothing to them, and they try to make him quirky. Like there's a character played by Jon Favreau, and they try so hard to make him like a quirky, like funny, almost Rocket Raccoon-esque character, and like all of his lines fall flat. So that kind of like first act of the movie is just so, it just moves way too fast. It doesn't give you those extra like scenes of character development that we need to really kind of like really care. It just kind of keeps moving, But once, they meet up with Paul Bettany's character, and the initial plot kicks in, and you find out, like, what their job is, and what they're trying to do, and what their main goal is, then the movie, like, becomes a lot of fun. It's able to kind of, like, breathe and, be well-paced for once. And you actually get introduced to Lando, and there's a lot of fun stuff in the middle half of this movie that's really entertaining, and I was actually really enjoying myself during it, and that's a lot of fun. Then you get to the third act. In the third act, I don't know, there's a little too much kind of like double crosses, and too much like, oh, this is what I'm really doing, oh, this is my real goal, and nope, I fooled you, this is actually my real goal, and it's like, what, I don't know, I don't care, like, and also, I was pleasantly surprised. There is, like, eye-rolling fan service moments, like, eye-rolling, like, obvious Han Solo origin moments, like the checklist Han Solo origin moments. There are a few of those throughout this movie, but not nearly as many as I was expecting to, and not as many like forced or contrived fan servicey moments until the third act. And then right at the end of the movie, you get some of those moments, and it's really like, no, you didn't have to do that. Including like a major character cameo at the end. I'm like, did we really need that in the Han Solo movie? Okay, like that was unnecessary. And yeah, there's a couple of those moments that I'm like, okay. And there's a few of those throughout, but like I said, it's not as bad. What's really surprising about this movie is that like I made a checklist before going into this movie of all the stuff I expected to see in it. And I was expecting them to kind of like do what X-Men First Class did, and kind of just, the one major flaw with that movie, I love that movie, I really like X-Men First Class, but the problem with that movie is they try to like condense everything into one movie, and it doesn't work. Like, Xavier and Magneto become friends. Oh, now they have a falling apart. Oh, now he's paralyzed. So, like, all that in one movie. And you're like, no, that's supposed to happen over the course of a few years, not in the course of, like, a month. But okay. And I was so expecting this movie to do that. I expect this movie, like, so much to just be checklist Han Solo movie, and to have him, like, start out the movie, be, like, optimistic, and at the end be jaded, and be the exact same way he is going into A New Hope. I was expecting it to be that. And it's not. It's not actually like that. He doesn't end off exactly the way he starts off with A New Hope. And you think, like, okay, that's a positive. Like, oh, it's a good thing. But it does that because it sets up a sequel, actually. There's a lot of sequel bait at the end of this movie, and I wasn't really expecting that, because I thought these, like, spin-off movies were supposed to be kind of like one-off stories. Then move on to another one. But there's a lot of setup at the end of this movie for a sequel, which I don't think I really need to see. Like, I don't know, I'm not too interested in another Solo movie with, even though I like the cast, I like the characters, but I don't think we need another movie, and that seems so. I wasn't expecting that the ending to have all this set up for future sequels, So that was kind of weird. But what I'm glad is that this movie comes together and feels like a cohesive movie. After the whole director switch up with Ron Howard coming in. I think Ron Howard did a pretty good job in directing it. It's not the most epic looking. A lot of handheld camera movements and stuff, which I guess kind of adds to just kind of the grounded kind of feel of this movie. So it's not as grand or epic, and there's not as much memorable imagery in the movie as previous Star Wars films has. But I guess it kind of works for this kind of movie. And speaking of characters that didn't work, Lando's co-pilot, L3, I didn't really like her character at all. I see what they were going for, and I couldn't tell if they were trying to make a stand, make a statement, or if that was a joke. I don't know what they're going for. And after Last Jedi, we had the whole free the animals message. I'm we don't need the message that L3 has in this movie. And I don't know, none of that stuff kind of worked for me. I know the audience was enjoying it. The audience I was with was laughing at a lot of that stuff, but I was kind of sitting there the whole time going, no, not really funny, not really interesting. Just seemed kind of shoehorned in. Oh, we need to have a new cool robots. That's kind of the thing. In the spin-off movies, they have a new robot K2SO in Rogue One, who I liked. That's a really fun character in Rogue One. So oh, how are we gonna make this one different and unique? Well, I got this idea. This is her character. It fell flat for me. I didn't care for that robot at all. So I guess overall, before I get into spoilers, it's like I said, it's a solid movie with some entertaining stuff. There's some fun sequences. When they actually make the Kessel Run at the end, that sequence is a lot of fun. And them flying through the clouds and everything and trying to evade the Imperial stuff. That's also what I liked. They didn't try to overdo it with the Imperial presence. I mean, they didn't try to do too much of that. They kind of just trying to scale it back a bit and have it tell its story. But there was a little bit of it in there because you have to have it at this point in time in the Star Wars universe. But that whole sequence in the Kessel Run was a lot of fun. There's a great kind of set piece in the movie that's very similar to the scene of Han and Luke, and they have Chewie as their prisoner. There's a scene that's very similar to that in this movie. That was fun, but it just suffers from just some stuff being rushed, that first act being just rushed, and not feeling like a necessary movie. This movie still doesn't feel very necessary. But it was surprisingly entertaining. It's a movie you check out at a matinee price or when it comes on DVD. It's worth the watch, but not the kind of movie you go out of your way to see. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a good thing because I expect this movie to be a disaster, but it's a bad thing because it's Star Wars. And it should be more than that. Star Wars shouldn't be a movie where it's oh yeah, check it out if you got the time. It should be an event thing. And that's just what kind of bums me out, is that Star Wars is not this event anymore. It's a new movie coming out. And it's no. Star Wars shouldn't be that. But like I said, it wasn't awful and it was fun, Not the greatest, but not the worst. Perfectly serviceable. And with some surprises. Like I said, I was really surprised by Alden Ehrenreich's performance. I thought he was actually really good as Han, and there's some good stuff in there that makes it entertaining. Alright, so now I'm going to talk about some spoilers. So if you haven't seen this movie yet and plan to, stop watching now. Or if you haven't seen the movie yet and just don't care, then you can keep watching. So I'm pretty sure Sam is going to keep watching at this point, because Sam purposefully didn't see this movie because he really didn't want to. And I don't blame him. So he'll probably keep watching it past this point. So where do we begin with spoilers? Let's talk about the real eye-rolling moments. When we find out how Han got his name. That was so stupid. He's trying to get into the Imperial Academy, and he's just my name's Han. The guy's what's your last name? He's I don't know. And he's oh, well, where are you from? Who are your people? And he's I don't have people. The guy goes, Han Solo. Really? That's how Han got his name. A random Imperial officer created it and wrote it down. Or just some of the obvious lines, what's your name? And Chewie growls, he goes, Chewbacca? Oh, that's way too long. I'm going to have to give you a nickname. Aha, get it? Because he calls him Chewie. That stuff, that's what I was expecting the entire movie to be. Luckily, it wasn't. Although the one line at the end that made me completely roll my eyes, and I was really, guys? was like when you see them. Oh, I can't think of the name, but the other kind of like competitor smuggler, character who turns out just to be this girl who that was kind of weird when she took off her helmet and revealed her face. The music like swelled and like Han and all of them were like, and I was like, who is she? I don't know who she is. Like, were we supposed to know who she was? And I guess the reveal was that she's just a young girl. I guess that was a shock and surprise. But that was weird. But either way, she reveals that she's taking the stuff. I'm already forgetting stuff from this movie. But whatever, the thing that they were smuggling off of Kessel, that stuff. And she says that she's going to use that for a good cause, for the rebellion. And then she goes to Han, like, you want to come with me? And he goes, nah, I'm good. And she's like, well, you may reconsider. And he's like, don't count on it. It was that bad that I was expecting him to look at the camera and wink. And that was the line I was like, no, come on, movie. So that stuff kind of annoyed me, I wasn't big on that. I do want to take a quick look at my checklist that I made before going into the movie. Now, some of these actually didn't happen, mostly because, like I said, this movie was setting up for a sequel, so that the stuff that I wrote in here that didn't happen in here will probably happen in the sequel. And that the first thing I wrote was that Han will get his vest at the end of the movie. Because I was so expecting this movie to end with him with his vest and everything. But no, they didn't, because they're probably saving that for the sequel. A shoot first reference? There kind of was. In that the scene at the end where it turns out that, Woody Harrelson's kind of a bad guy, and he's talking, and Han just, shoots him real quick. I didn't mind that. It's not as bad as, a line of, Woody Harrelson be like, hey, make sure to always shoot first. There's nothing like that. I didn't mind that moment. Actually, I thought it worked as a moment. It was pretty good. I thought, didn't mind that. Jabba the Hutt. You didn't see Jabba the Hutt in this movie like I was expecting to. Now, that being said, I was a little off, but I basically predicted this ending almost perfectly. I was so expecting this movie to end, with someone mentioning, oh, well, there's this, gangster, over on Tatooine, you might find some good stuff there, and then, he cuts to, Han approaching Jabba and being like, oh, I hear you got some job opportunities, and it cuts the credits. Close. The movie ends with Han and Chewie and the Millennium Falcon flying off, going to Tatooine to meet up with Jabba the Hutt. Almost perfectly predicted that ending. Let's see. Now I was thinking maybe there'd be a Greedo moment if you saw Jabba the Hutt. There was no Greedo. There was a reference to the I know line. There was. And it worked as a line on its own, but then it makes it sound annoying when you realize that it was a reference to the other movie, because it's just Han and Lando are looking over the Millennium Falcon, which is completely destroyed. Lando just goes, I hate you, and Han just goes, I know. And as a standalone line, that works. It's a funny exchange, but it is kind of eye-rolling, oh, it's kind of a reference to Empire. So, I don't know, that's kind of good and kind of not. A kid Han and showing his rough and or no family. I was expecting to show Han. I was expecting them to show Han as a kid, and they didn't. They cut to him as an adult, so that was good. There was kind of a reference to his family, him not having a family, him kind of being rough by living in Corellia and everything, so there was that. A don't get cocky line. There was not that in the movie. Good job, they did mention that. A parsec joke. They did do a parsec joke, but it was actually kind of funny. When Han's like, oh man, we did that in 12 parsecs. And, and Chewie roars, goes, oh, well, if you round down, you just gotta round down. And I thought that was funny. I did say, or mention the rebellion, and there was. They didn't throw it, in your face, there wasn't, constant rebellion stuff in the movie, which I liked. Like I said, it was kind of separate from all that stuff. But there was, of course, like I just said, the line at the end, and all that stuff. It was minor references. I did put it as a maybe, an appearance by Boba Fett, because I could easily see that happening in this movie. But there was no Boba Fett appearance, but now that we know they're saving that for the Boba Fett spin-off movie that they're making next. Yay. The cameos that you expected to be in this movie, Jabba and Boba Fett, didn't happen. But we did get a cameo by friggin' Darth Maul. Okay, now that scene. So, all the stuff with the Emilia Clarke character, Han's love interest, I didn't mention that in my spoiler-free section, I wasn't too big on. She ends up, killing Paul Bettany's character and taking over his organization. And here's the sequel-based stuff, because throughout the movie they mention how she had a really bad past, really bad history and everything, and they keep alluding to it, what she had to do in the past to get where she is now. And what is that? They never reveal it. They never say that. And then, after she kills Paul Bettany, she, calls, like, the actual head of the Crimson Dawn organization that they work for. And the head of that organization is none other than Darth Maul. I just don't see why we needed Darth Maul in a Han Solo movie. And I know some people liked it. A lot of people cheered in the theater when that happened. And it was, like, it was cool to see Darth Maul again, but I just don't see why we need it. And that just seemed like really obvious fan service. Or them just trying too hard to subvert expectations. Like, oh crap, like, they think they all know Jabba's gonna be in this movie. Let's cut that out, and who we'll put in here now? Darth Maul. People like him, and people want to see more of him. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like, the idea that he's the head of this crime organization, and it's just set up for another movie. That's really all it is. And then, of course, like, the one thing I was really happy about this movie was that, like, they avoided having, like, the Force and references to all that stuff throughout. And I was like, good on you, movie. It didn't have to reference any of that kind of, like, mystical stuff. Which is something that never really would have come up in Han Solo's life, like, up until that point, like, before A New Hope. So I'm like, good on them. They didn't feel the need to shoehorn in the Force, And then at the end, when, in the hologram, Darth Maul stands up, Force grabs his lightsaber and ignites it for no reason other than lightsaber. Like, that was the exact moment where I was just, like, channeling Red Letter Media and just being like, red lightsaber, I know what that is. There's no reason for him to ignite that lightsaber in that scene. I did like the scene where Han met Chewie. I thought that was a fun sequence where, I actually liked the idea that Han was working in the Imperial Army at the beginning of the movie. Like, I actually kind of like that bit. Like, what kind of bums me out about the first act being so rushed is that I like the stuff that they had in there. I like Han in the army. I like the war scene where they're, like, in the trenches and it's like a battle, going on. I like all that stuff. It just needed the extra, like, padding and, like, character development to make it engaging. Of course, like, he gets thrown into this pit, which is where they throw the deserters for the Beast. And the Beast walks out and it's Chewie, and then they end up working together to break out. Like, that's a fun moment. I like that. But yeah, I was so shocked when, like, he runs out and he's running towards Woody Harrelson's ship that's flying away, and they see him and they're like, okay, you know what, bring him on board. There's a couple scenes on there where Han talks to Chewie, and immediately the next scene they're on a mission. It's like, there's no real character development with those characters. So then when they die in that subsequent scene, when the Jon Favreau character dies and Woody Harrelson's love interest dies, I couldn't care less. Like, when she sacrifices herself and blows up the bridge, I was like, okay. Neat. You know what I mean? Same thing happened with L3 died later on in the movie. That too, when she died, I was like, okay. Cool, and Lando's running over and, like, picking her up and, like, oh, emotional. I was like, eh. Again, with K3's character, of her being, like, a character who wants droid rights and all that kind of stuff, and that one scene liberates all the droids. I'm like, oh, really? Like, I don't know. None of that worked for me. I don't know what it was. None of her character worked for me. None of the jokes were really funny. It felt like they tried too hard to give her a personality and to make her stand out. And it didn't, like, work. Like, it wasn't charming or funny. Like, K2SO in Rogue One was funny. Because, like, you totally understood where he was coming from. Like, yeah, how he was very logical. But, like, he knew all this stuff would fail, but he had to do it anyway. And he wasn't happy with that. And that's funny. Like, you know what I mean? And all his reactions were funny, And this one, her being, like, a droid who wants to fight for, equal rights. I was like, no. Later on in the movie, when they're making the Kessel Run, the sequence was fun, when, like, Woody Harrelson's getting on the little, like, the little turret gun, and they started playing the music from New Hope, and I'm like, I was getting really into it. I mean, then again, a lot of times the music came on, and I was like, yeah, I'd kind of rather be home watching A New Hope. It helped the scene, and it was a lot of fun. I really liked that sequence. But overall, like I said, it didn't, like, shove the references down your throat as much as I was expecting it to, and so that's a positive. Like, there are those eye-rolling moments throughout, that don't really work, but for the most part, the movie kind of, like, moves past that and just becomes, like, a fun adventure, which I guess is all we really needed coming out of, like, Last Jedi. So I'm glad this isn't too controversial. I'm happy that we're just kind of like a simple, fun adventure, and for that, it's alright, Fun adventure, just really flawed and nothing too special, and there is some gratuitous stuff in there that we don't need, like Darth Maul. That's just set up for a sequel, so if this movie does well at the box office, We'll probably be getting a sequel announcement at some point. But either way, that's Solo, a Star Wars story. You know what? Even though, I did enjoy the movie and didn't find it to be that bad, I am just glad that it's over with in a weird way. I know that they're talking about that they should push this movie back to December, due to the reshoots and everything. And I was like, I'm really glad they didn't, because I just wanted to get this movie done. There's so much stuff surrounding this movie, from the directors changing up to just the fact that it's a Han Solo origin movie and all that kind of stuff. That I was just I want to just be able to move past this movie. And now that we've seen it, we got it, we can move past. And now we have a good year and a half break until we get to episode 9. Because episode 9 is coming out till December of 2019. And that's something we desperately need right now with Star Wars. It's just a break. But either way though, that's Solo, alright movie. Not the best. And yeah, that's about it for now. And until next time, talk to you guys later.